And welcome back to OneMicNite, the podcast that brings you stories of artists and people on their journey, helping to guide, answer questions, and motivate you in life and the business. You know who I am, it's Marcos Luis, and I am back. This is season 5, and I want to thank everybody for joining me for 17 years of OneMicNite. It's been an incredible journey, and I hope that I am bringing you people and documenting lives and inspiring you and helping you to move forward in your own lives, because that's what we do here. Today, I'm extremely excited, as I say always, but today I'm more excited than ever. My guest today is a multifaceted creative. She's a speaker, she's a screenwriter, she's a novelist. She is a book consultant. She does a lot of things, and I'm really happy to have her here. So today I'm giving the mic to Shelly Snow Pordue. Did I say that correctly?
Pordea.
Pordea, I'm sorry. Pordea.
That's okay.
Welcome to OneMicNite.
Thank you so much. Just excited to be here.
Listen, I have questions.
Okay.
The first question is, who is Shelly Pordea?
Oh gosh, wow. Yeah. So I feel like identity is such a multifaceted mosaic of an experience, isn't it? But I'll start by saying all the things that you said. But first and foremost, I really just see myself as a mom and a wife and an advocate. I love the things that I do, and I love writing stories that I think make an impact. So yeah.
I like that. Storytelling is important, is very
Yeah.
important. So I want to back it up just a little bit. Where are you from and how did you grow up and what are you about?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm from St. Louis, Missouri originally, and I grew up in a just outside the city for about the first 4 or 5 years of my life, and then my family moved to follow like this bombastic preacher leader that I now consider to be a cult. And so we moved our family away from St. Louis for about 6 or 7 years of my childhood, and then we returned, still, heavily indoctrinated, and attended a smaller church. So the church that we went to when I was quite young was, by all standards, a megachurch, and they were actually featured in Time magazine in the 1970s of like 20,000 people on campus. Who knows if that's true, but that's what they, said. But it felt like it as a little child. Yeah, we for sure had about 6,000 or so. That's, when we're in the main auditorium every Sunday. And then when we moved back to St. Louis, we joined a small church still affiliated with that movement. It's called the Independent Fundamental Baptist Movement, or the IFB for short. So it's come to light in recent days. A few months ago, a documentary appeared called Let Us Pray, Prey,
Mm.
about our cult. So totally encourage you to check that out, to know a little bit more about that background. Yeah, so I can go
What's
into
I'm
more
sorry,
stories.
what would be your definition of a cult, or what is a definition of a cult for people would
Yeah.
say?
So I think that it's so interesting because it can have a sensationalized connotation and maybe be problematic in society. But I define it as cult expert Stephen Hassan does. He provides a really it's an effective tool, and it's very simple to remember. It's called the BITE model, BITE. So behavioral control, information control, thought control, and what's the last one? Oh, emotional control, right? So if you have all four of these things that are present in a system, and typically led by a very charismatic leader, then that's how he defines a cult. And so it was really, finding some of that language that helped me be confident in using that word in
Mm.
public. I had been using it in private for many years, just saying like, I think I was in a cult,
Right. Yeah.
you know. But that's why I use it freely today, because I can kind of provide some context and background. Like, don't take my word for it. Go, use what the experts say about it, and measure it up. And I think it meets every criteria.
Interesting. It has such a negative connotation to it. And I think the statistics say that there are about 10,000 cults right now in the US. And from about 300,000 people to about 3 million people are involved in cults, which is
Yeah,
staggering. That's
yeah,
staggering,
it
you
is. It
know?
is.
And the cults seem to sort of separate you from what the society wants you, the norm of society. And
Yeah.
that's how they sort of keep you in the cults,
Yes,
you know,
absolutely. They
mhm,
they they control those things,
control.
right? Right. And it's interesting because I feel like there's also a misconception largely if, you've not been exposed to a like very fanatical cult, you might think of something like, Jonestown or, these mass suicides that we've seen in other like Heaven's Gate cult or whatever, like they're not all isolated so much. In my experience, we try to be in the world and not of the world, which is, like a biblical thing that, many Christians will use even today. But it was to an extreme, right? And so we were basically hiding in plain sight by the thousands. Yeah.
I guess they say it's sort of staying under the radar. I mean, you
Yeah.
sort of want to, you have the control, but you don't want to be singled out as doing something different. You sort of
Yeah.
have to stay there.
Yeah. And the general population, they don't want to offend people. You
Hmm.
have the right to practice whatever. And so it's, quite benevolent of them to say, like, oh, yeah, they're a little weird, but, that's, for them, not for me. And they don't understand really the insidious nature of what goes on behind the closed doors.
Right. And so growing up like that, was it hard for you to separate yourself? Was it hard for you to find yourself? What was,
Gosh, so because yeah, that's right. That's
yeah.
a question because I don't know what it's like to live a day of my life without that influence. And so sometimes I do ask the question, who would I be had I not had that experience?
Mhm.
But very early on, I understood that there were things approved and things not approved. So I'll give you a little context too, background. It was in the 1970s when it really started to get big, this movement, and that's when I was born. And so as it like grew in popularity and the leader became more and more severe, the goalpost basically, just got moved. Everything that was approved at one point, became not approved, right? So there were more and more and more rules built onto this. And so as those things were happening, for example, TV was fine if you watched a certain amount or like only watched certain shows or, they didn't swear or whatever. Like when I was younger, we had a TV in our house, but we had the rule like you had to turn it off if there was one swear word. And so obviously we would watch very little full shows.
Mhm.
And then it was like, no, we have to get rid of it all. Girls could wear like shorts to their knees, and then it was like, no, you have to like wear skirts all the time. And, just rule after rule would evolve. And so as I was growing up, I realized that if I wanted to, like if I questioned or if I wanted to still participate in the things that I was once allowed to, I would have a double life. Like I just learned to be a really good liar
Right.
and hide a lot of the stuff that I did. Yeah. So I became very sneaky.
Yeah, that's interesting. So when that's all happening and you're coming to a realization, how
Yeah.
do you separate yourself and how do you then begin to come into the person that would allow you to have your creativity spawn and,
Yeah.
move into another sector of life?
Oh gosh, yes. So I don't think that I did it consciously.
Mhm.
I There were a few circumstances that took place in our family. So, like I said, we were in, near the megachurch for a few years. We moved back to our hometown of St. Louis, and then my younger sister was born at that time. So there's an age gap of like 10 years between us, and I have a brother who's a year older than I am. We were really, really close growing up, and then a brother that's about 8 years younger. And so um, just moving, there and then I became a teenager shortly thereafter. And at that time, I was going to a church camp and I don't know if we need to give a content warning here, but I do have some abuse in my background, so I'll go
Mhm.
into that a little bit. But I had suffered sexual abuse as a young child at the megachurch. And so it was not until I was going to church camp that as a teenager, and the practice was very fiery preaching from the pulpit, very explicit. As a child, you don't really understand, that stuff kind of goes over your head. But as I was 13 or 14 years old, and this guy was preaching from the pulpit, and he was using words like whore and Jezebel and all this stuff, and started going into some detail, and I was just like so shocked, like
Absolutely.
that that's what happened to me. Like it was just a light bulb moment of,
Mm,
oh my gosh. And I felt just like so dirty. Um, and obviously I'm dealing with this new realization, and I go to a church leader and tell her about what happened, and like, just coming to this realization. And so she, because protocol means like in our group, everything you take to the man of God is what they were called. And so you would go directly to him and tell him your trauma. And so that's what we did. And I couldn't get through most of it. So, my youth leader, she started to tell part of the story. And it was really the first time that I understood that this is how I'm going to be labeled, right? Um, and so from there, I really tried to start to prove myself as like the good girl, because I now had something to really prove, right? I'm trying to say, no, I'm not a dirty piece of trash,
right.
like they just
Yeah.
said I was.
Right.
I'm worth something. And so within the system, within the rules, I'd really started to, because I'd always been creative. I was a singer. I, sang in all of the stuff that the church put on. I actually ended up traveling for them for a while. And I just really kind of hunkered down, not right away, but my brother had the same experience that I did in when we were up as little children, and it was the babysitter that had molested us. And so he had his own journey, but it kind of, we had this intersection where he ran away as a teenager. And when that happened, it was kind of like, oh, I'm alone here, and I really have to prove that I'm okay. I'm a good girl. And so I sought to do whatever I could to advance in the system to get the approval that I needed, so that the things that I was doing and creating would be acceptable. Um, and that really started me on the trajectory of like major, in my opinion, religious trauma is how I would label it today. But that it was not a clean transition of like,
You-
I now understand this about myself, and I have to express myself, as a
Right.
creative.
Do you feel like that type of expression was sort of a therapy for you? Trying to
Oh,
get the approval, and once you get people to approve what you're doing, that's sort of a therapy.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's interesting because, like I said, my brother took a different path. Like we were best
Hmm.
friends growing up, right? And he ran away and took a different path, and I tried to prove myself within the system, right? And so it wasn't until years later that we came together and really started unpacking our entire experience together. And he, I could see like that was his way of protecting himself. Like that was his way of survival, that
Yes.
he had to
Yes.
escape. And then he in turn could see how my survival technique was proving that I was going to be good enough, that all of the rules were going to be followed. And yeah, like you said, it was my therapy. It was my self-protected method of like survival.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll share this with you as well. In my own family, we have challenges as well. My older sister was estranged, as we were growing up. My parents were divorced. I went through some issues with domestic violence in my home. So my sister sort of followed the path of my father. And, we don't have a good relationship now. She's still dealing with all those things. I was able to work through those things myself, and I have a very close relationship with my mother.
Mm,
And in doing that, in doing the work, it enables you to have close relationships with other people, me with
Yes.
women, me with, just dealing with myself first.
Yeah.
So yeah, we all deal with it in different ways. And as long as you can acknowledge it and you come to that self-realization, you then
Yeah.
begin to, you do the work and you can relate to people and move on in life and express yourself in ways
So
that
yes.
inspire people.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Let's talk about some of your work. You have some incredible work. You've got two books. There's one called Tracing Time. Tell us about that one.
Yes. So Tracing Time is actually a series. It starts with the book Tracing Time, and it's a
Okay.
trilogy. So my dad passed away suddenly when he was just before his 58th birthday. And so I was living overseas at the time, and I just had no way to kind of like express the emotion other than writing. It's how I felt, it just like was coming out of me. And I actually didn't start writing the story right away because I was a little bit superstitious that like something bad would happen again. But yeah, so I just started writing this time travel story, and it's just a little bit about how I was trying to like regain the moments that I had lost in the past because, like I said, I had lived overseas probably for about 8 or 10 years at the time. And so I, had very few moments in my adulthood with my dad, other than, when I would come and visit. And so just made me very aware of time slipping through our fingers,
I love that.
Um,
I'm sorry, I want to take a little aside from that.
sure.
How was living overseas for you? How was living away for you? Was that another part of therapy for you? It had to be.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
So that's really, I attribute that. So my husband and I met at what I call the cult college. But he was from Romania. He is from Romania. And he just like he grew up under communism, like with the communist dictator Ceausescu, right? And so he lived through the revolution. He was a teenager in high school when it happened. And so he got there and he was like, this is a little bit crazy town, right? He immediately could recognize the tyranny that was actually happening. And so, but before he left, we met, and I didn't realize how much I was in love with him, but when he didn't come back, I did realize it. And so we ended up, getting together, getting married, and I moved overseas with him. And so it was that I really credit that as my clean break from the cult. That was what saved me.
I
Um,
love that. I love that
yeah.
so much. Yeah. I always say on this show that, first of all, traveling is the best education you can have. You find yourself when you travel. It's, you become so much more humble. You learn so much about people and cultures. You're able to connect a lot more. So if anyone can travel, do it, make time, the best experience of your life happen.
I agree
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. I don't feel 100% American anymore.
Right. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
And you don't have to. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You're a person of the world. You're a citizen of the world now because you've
absolutely.
had that experience.
Yeah,
And I'm sure that's where a
absolutely.
lot of your creativity comes from too.
Oh, I get so inspired. Truly.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. The architecture, the culture, the foods, even. It's just, yeah, inspirational for sure.
The hug who had no arms. Tell us
Yes.
about that one.
Yeah, of course. So I was, in lockdown like everyone else. And I was listening to a podcast actually where a children's author was talking about his book, lovely book. It's called The Hug Who Got Stuck. And he works with just different professionals who are in the field of mental health. And so he has a whole series for children. And when he was, giving this interview, I was like, I don't really feel stuck as much as I just don't have arms. We were
Mm.
so secluded. And so the next day in my morning writing, I just wrote this little story. And my son came down, and he was, I was having my morning coffee and writing, and he was like, "What are you working on, Mom?" And I read it to him, and he was 21 at the time, and he's like I look up and he's crying. And I was like, maybe I should do a children's book. And he's like, yeah, I think you should. So that's how it was born. It is just a sweet story of trying to come to the realization that we can express love in so many different ways, and whatever our abilities are, that we can embrace them. Yeah.
Why is that important?
Oh my gosh, I think it's important because the moments that we feel alone and isolated, like we can't express, what our feelings inside, to understand that it is okay to be atypical, and not have to go with like what society says. It's a hug
Yeah,
and it doesn't have arms.
right.
And so, like, the expectation of now what am I supposed to do now? I've felt like that so many times in my life of like, okay, but if I'm not expected to be this way, but I am this way, what do I do now? So just expressing that to children, especially, that that's okay. You are who you are.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree
Yeah.
with you more. And I'm a hugger. So
Yeah.
even at my job, I work in a very casual place. We hug.
Yeah.
It's, for men, it doesn't matter for me, unless they don't, obviously if they don't want it, but we'll
Obviously.
give the guy a hug. But
Yeah.
I just feel like, excuse me, a form of expression. You have to. We're
Yes.
human. It's a human connection. During the pandemic, there was months that I had no physical touching, nothing. It was horrible,
I
you
bet.
know? And I just feel like we need that part of human connection. So hugging is definitely something we need to do.
100% agree. Yeah, and that's how I was feeling too. Even though we even had our daughter like move back home before they shut everything down, officially. She's just like, I'm gonna come to you guys. I don't know what's happening. And so like we all were in the same space for about 6 weeks together.
Right.
And even still, it was like it just felt so isolated and lacking that, love
Exactly.
that I'm usually surrounded by, right?
Hard times.
Yeah.
Tell us about your new book coming out.
Yes. So my new book, you're not even going to say the title, right? Because it's so provocative. Yeah. So it's called The Cheating Wife.
Mhm.
And I'm still happily married. It's not an autobiography. My husband and I actually witnessed some graffiti on a woman's property that said cheating wife, a couple years ago. And it was very jarring, as you can imagine. And, just conversations in the community started popping up. And I was like, just so befuddled, really. It's like, this is, what is this, the 1800s? Like, this was like 2022. And that just to me is so abusive. Who would do that? And like, we should not be labeling women with the scarlet letter anymore. Like what? And so yeah, a few weeks later I went to my husband and I was like, so I think I'm gonna write a story.
Yeah.
I think this is my next project. And he was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And then I think the next day he came to me, he's like, you know how your books say the title and then your name right under it? Maybe for this one you could just put like written by at the bottom instead of the cheating wife, Shelly Smith. I was like, okay, that's fair. We'll do that. But yeah, I'm really excited about it. I hope that it challenges everyone to kind of take a look at what our part is in society, of like when something like that happens, who is asking, is that woman okay? Instead of, are we enabling the abuse? Are we gossiping? What is our role in this? And then, my church experience comes into it as well. The church actually plays a character almost, in the book. And I don't vilify that, but, I actually have a beautiful character in there. Her name is Jenny, and she's like the best church lady who, ends up, kind of speaking against the institutional, ostracization of, the woman who is accused. And so, but yeah, it's like, it's hopefully to just challenge the ideas of, what are we doing here? Like, are we coming to the aid of people? And also hopefully, because it's largely based on not only the event that took place in my life when I witnessed that graffiti, but because I know so many women who have been through abusive relationships. I can't rattle off statistics, but
Right. Yeah.
I do know that the overwhelming majority of harm and crime is perpetrated by men to women in our country. And so for a woman to just feel seen is, my ultimate goal. Like she's not alone and there is help. So
Absolutely. As aforementioned on my part. So,
yeah,
yeah, I'm right there with you.
yeah.
You write things to empower women and you speak a lot to empower women. Why is that so important to you?
I think that it's really important to destigmatize certain subjects. I feel as if once I am able to share stories, and even every time, like even today, I have told this story before. It's not my first time talking about sexual abuse,
Mhm.
but it feels like each time I am able to do that and bring that darkness into the light, another part of me heals. And so just being able to destigmatize certain subjects that we call taboo, it shouldn't be on us. Those are taboo because the atrocities that were, performed against us happened. We should not have to carry that shame. And our silence should not be the expectation because of that abuse. And so that's really why it's important to me. Of like, I'm not carrying the shame of a perpetrator anymore, ever.
I love that. I love that 100%. I like that because I've noticed, even on your social media, and yes, I was going through your social media,
Oh, okay.
you speak and you empower the women. And what I like to do here at One Mic Night is I not only talk about mental health, but I like to find solutions. What kind of solutions do you know, would you say to help encourage women?
Yes.
Obviously
Oh,
speaking, to them, do you have groups that maybe you get together with and
yes, yes, actually. So I am part of the board of directors for a nonprofit called Living Cult Free. And we do a lot of work around cult survivors because statistically, over half of women who come out of those experiences have experienced cult or sexual abuse. Um, and then we try to raise awareness about coercive control and manipulation because even if you've never been into a setting that is like cult-like, right, you have likely in the workplace experienced these things. And so those are the types of offerings that I try to bring to the table with my volunteer work and speaking to the women about their role. Another thing is that for me, and I know that there is financial barrier to some, so we try to also bring some therapeutic care, and we're working on different grants and things to provide for women of abuse that can tap into those for you know therapy, for example. I've tried every therapy under the sun. Okay, probably not. I probably haven't tried everything. I just feel like, if somebody says, I did EMDR, I'm like, cool, I'll do
right.
EMDR, and like I've done, different types, and it's just all of it is, path to healing, and leave what doesn't work for you. Like, don't do it again. Like
You
there's no
took the
obligation.
words right out of my mouth. It's all an
Yeah.
individual situation, which is why also goes back to, for me, the church and spirituality. I've never been a member of a church. It's always been spirituality for me. And that was one thing that my mother left up to me. She said, you don't have to join the church. You choose what you want to do. So I have my relationship with, the energy and the force around me to guide me to what I
Mhm.
do, So
Yeah.
yeah, it's all an
And what a
individual.
gift.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
that's such a gift, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what else do you have coming up along with that? Are you speaking any engagements that you'd like to tell us about?
Yeah, I mean,
As I'm
I'm speaking.
sure.
Yeah. Well, this month is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and so I've been doing some speaking on that. So I'm in the LA area right now. I am going to be speaking to a few groups here, and then my book launch, the official launch of The Cheating Wife, is Wednesday, April 24th. So it's really soon. It might be out by the time this is out. So yeah, that's what I'm doing currently. And then I am in May and the first week of June, like the last few days of May and the first week of June, I am going to Europe with my husband and getting away for a while,
Yes.
like checking out for 2 weeks. So that'll be good. And then I'll have a small book tour in the Midwest where I'm from coming up later in the fall. Yeah.
I love it. Well, I hope you make it to New York, which is where I'm located. I'm in Brooklyn, New York. So if you come to New York with a book launch, let me know. I'll be there to support for
Awesome.
sure.
Yeah.
Um,
So I just want to say thank you so much for being a man who supports the work of women. So often people think that, the patriarchy is bad for like just women, but when a man comes alongside a woman and says, I understand how this is horrible for us all, and we can, walk in step together and do this work together. That's really what it's about. So thank you. Thank you for standing up, and thank you for being an advocate.
You're welcome. And I have to say, it comes from a strong woman who teaches her son how to understand. So I thank you. It's going back to you. I thank you. And I'm sure you're teaching that to your kids as well. So thank you. And thank you to my mother who taught me. So yeah, it takes a strong woman. So keep empowering women and keep shining. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Tell everybody how we can get in touch with you. I know the books are available on Amazon.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. Amazon for anything. I have a pretty unique name, and so you can Google my name, Shelly Pordea, and that's where I am everywhere on social media, my website. Put it in the search engine and Amazon. You'll find me. I'm the only one out there. Luckily. I mean, how lucky is that, right?
Yeah. Right.
My
me.
brother's name is Jon Snow. Do you know, like from Game of Thrones?
Yes, of course.
It's like, if you Google him, only Game of Thrones stuff comes up. But
hey, listen, my name too. My name is everywhere. So everybody's Marcos Luis. I don't know. There's about a million of them. Well, everyone, please make sure you check out Shelly Snow Pordea.
Yeah.
Shelly Snow Pordea. The book is called The Cheating Wife. It'll be available, I guess, this weekend, April 24th, book launch in Los Angeles, which will also be doing a tour. Make sure you check her out. All the information will be down below. I want to thank you so much. Thank you for empowering women. Thank you for speaking, and thank you for sharing your story here at OneMicNite. Please come back anytime. My name is Marcos Luis. Thank you guys all for joining me for the show. The show is OneMicNite, OneMicNite. If you'd like to be on the show, or if you'd like to support this podcast, you know what to do. It's available down in the notes. Make sure you do. Also, join the Facebook community, OneMicNite. Drop your flyers, information there. We're always posting on OneMicNite Facebook. Thank you for joining me. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.